think about this. This junk. That's. You think about this junk. That's.
Hey, this is Glendon Cameron with the Hustler Mindset, pimping your mind for success. This is in podcast form. Just listen and learn. In putting together this program, I had to really do some soul searching, because one of the things that I've learned in the last 4 years is you can put out great information, you can put out a ton of helpful and useful things, essentially giving people the tools to be successful, yet somehow it doesn't happen for a lot of people. And I've wondered about that, and I've pondered about that. Then I had to really deconstruct my life and myself and how things went. We live in the United States of America. Now, this will pretty much work anywhere, but we live in the United States of America, and it works well here. The United States of America is a system. The country is a system set upon systems set upon systems. You learn the rules and the regulations of those systems, you can be successful. The hustler mindset is a whole completely different set of rules. When I speak of universal law or the power of your subconscious mind, which was written by Dr. Joseph E. Murray years ago, people kind of look at me sideways. They're like, yeah, there's got to be something else. It's got to be something else. What took me years to learn how to do was to use those laws and facilitate and manipulate the laws of the system. And a lot of people don't really get the fact that you can do many things that will make your life better, richer, and more profitable by learning this. When I was in that boarding house and I was going through all that hell, my life didn't get better until I started making what I call conscious choice, where I was in the chair at the guy's office in PowerTel, and he was like, hey, I could possibly get you 2 more weeks. And I made a conscious choice. I was like, no, I'll leave now. I will figure it out. Those were my exact words. I didn't realize how pivotal that was, because I want you to understand it was an extremely emotional moment. This guy, and he wasn't, he didn't want to do it, but he was directed to do it by company mandate, that I no longer had a source of income. And he was letting me go. I didn't have any money in the bank. I was already living hand to mouth. And in the midst of all that, I made one of the best decisions of my life. No, I'll go now. I will figure it out. And the thing is, I wasn't mad or pissed off. Somehow that opened up a door of determination. And where I'm going with this is, you have to start thinking about what you're doing when you're doing it. Most of us operate on a reaction mode or a passive mode. That day I was operating on a very active and determined mode. And that was the day that set the chain of events where 2.5 years later I had my own business. I went through a series of jobs that gained me a network, that gained me contacts, that just literally changed my life. Another point, I was at one of the storage auctions, and one of the old timers that seemed to like me, and he was just like, he said, don't bet your heart on this. You can't make a full-time living at storage auctions. And I said, well, I intend to. There are a lot of people who really believe they could not make a living full-time at storage auctions. I never let that enter my mind, because I just saw the opportunity. So let's really just deconstruct those two things. When you're presented with an opportunity, you're presented with a task, you're presented with a test, relationship issue, how you make that determining effort in your brain is very pivotal to the outcome that you will or you will not get. I have consulted about a few hundred people now. And I will say the biggest thing that I've noticed is a lot of people, A, don't have the proper information. That's a big problem. And I should say B, don't have the information. That's a big problem. Because A is the inability to believe in themselves. There's a certain classification of people. There's a group of people who are waiting on permission to be successful. For the purposes of this session, I'm going to say black people, some Latino people, and some white people. They're waiting on the system or the government or to make things better for them. I had a thought process, fuck that. And it brought me into a very ethical conundrum, because when I was in the storage auction business, I made a lot of money off a lot of people because they gave me stuff, and I did not tell them that, hey, those Fat Farm jeans, you can get $50 all day on eBay for that. It was a decision. It was not a mistake. It was like, oh, you're going to give me these clothes that I can make money with? Thank you. A lot of people consider that unethical. How I got my job at Rent-A-Crate, by faking my references. A lot of people consider that unethical. I sleep well at night because this was my thought process and framework. I need to move from where I am currently living to a different level. Number 2, I don't have any help. Number 3, time is wasting. That was the gap where it's like, okay, I'm not going to rob anyone. I'm not going to kill anybody. I'm not going to. There were certain limits that I had set that I wasn't going to do. But if I could use use my resources, using whatever I had at hand to get ahead, yeah, I did it. And it was a mental transference from my upbringing, which was do the right thing, pray, and put it in God's hands. That, even as a child, that never ever really worked for me. It just never did. So I do believe that you do get assistance from the universe, but a lot of it, like say you have an ancestor or a relative that looks over you. I believe in stuff like that. But also, you got to look at a larger system. I think when you are trying to be successful, some of the biggest problems aren't just competition, but it's the battle that goes on in your mind. Because somewhere during the hardwiring, the mental framework of who you are, there's a set of principles, guidelines, rules, and regulations. And you're not really aware of them. They were put there either by your parent or grandparents or society. Something put those rules in there. When you start making your own rules and guidelines, it creates conflict, because it took me literally 3 years to really start to own a lot of my new philosophies or actually accept older philosophies. And that's when things just started to happen. It was just like, it was night and day. It was just, and every time that I would default back to what I want to call inbred mental framework, the stuff you get from your parents, I would start to fail. Now, if you had parents who were very aware, very supportive, and either they purposely knew how the universal laws worked or they didn't, and they gave you a good framework, you might be good to go already. You may have parents that's like, you could do anything, and they didn't just say you could do anything or be anything. They said you could do anything and be anything. However, there's a process. There's a certain set of steps. That's what you need to do. This is, they didn't just say you could do anything. They showed you, because in my research, and I read up on successful people, and frequently their kids do very well from a combination of maybe personal grooming, or, when I say personal grooming, father grooming son, father grooming daughter, to connections, because successful people have an energy about them where they want to hang out and live next to successful people. All that plays a role. You might, and this is going to be really unflattering and it's going to be insulting to some people, you might be very successful more so by what neighborhood you lived in versus all the hard work you did in your life because it created certain connections that you just couldn't get any other way. When you live in a neighborhood with people who are decision makers, and John says, hey, my son needs a job, you know anything? And you have a pipeline of 20 business owners, and if one of them has a job, I've actually seen businesses create jobs for people like that. I've seen it. So there's a lot that has to go on with your mental framework, because I saw that at one stage in my life when I was mentally unaware, before the hustler mindset came to be. And I was jealous and I was envious. I was like, no one's ever done that for me. I was pissed off and I didn't understand it. After I went through the framework change, I had someone do that for me. I was working for this company. It was the next to last job, and I was getting screwed. Some people I reached out to, and they said, hey, we need to get them out there. And they took me around, interviewed, and I got another job in a week. Networks are incredibly important. And I wouldn't have been in that network if I didn't change how I thought. Now, let's go with universal law. Let's go with the law of intent. When I was leaving PowerTel, I had a strong intent to better myself and figure it out. That was my intent. And there was not a lot of emotional garbage with it. It was just like, this is my situation. This is where I'm at. This is what I need to do. It was very clear. Because one of the things is, when you go through very hard times, it cuts the clutter out. You can't afford to be like, well, look, no, you know, it was just like, I don't have any money. I'm gonna get, and at the time, unemployment didn't go on for a year. You got 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12. It wasn't like it is now. So even with getting unemployment, that clock was still ticking, and it was ticking hard. Hard, I tell you, hard. So I knew I had to come up with something. And as I look back and I really, really take it apart, the lack of the emotional components, the stuff, the grit, the oh, woe is me, and all of this other stuff, I didn't have that. I had none of that stuff. It was just pure, unfiltered intent. This is why I tell you to go somewhere quiet. Turn off the television, turn off your phone, and just really let some stuff go. And this is one of the reasons I meditate, because I used to be, I guess what's called ADD or whatever, all over the place, and couldn't sit and focus, and was just getting on the people like, that's just who you are. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. You can change your personality if you want to. And people are like, what? You can change your personality. Years ago, I took a handwriting analysis test, and this was after I read a book that said you can change your personality by changing your handwriting. And it's true. I've changed my handwriting 3 different times. It was kind of fat and real bold when I was a kid. Then I wanted to be more artistic, and every time I changed my handwriting, I changed my personality. Which is when I tell you that when you sit down and you write your goals out, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. There are many things that happen. So you can change your personality. So if you have a personality that you're not happy with, because one of the things with cultural narratives is you are who you are, and people should just love you for who you are. To an extent, I agree with that. To another extent, if you are not happy with who you are, you need to change, and you can change. That's the thing that people miss. They get so caught up in, this is just who I am. Understand, you were developed. The religion you have, unless you picked it as an adult, it was given to you by your parents. You didn't pick to be a Baptist. You didn't pick to be a Roman Catholic. You didn't pick to be a Seventh-day Adventist. Your parents picked it for you. And frequently, when the child grows up and becomes an adult and says, hey, I don't want that anymore, there's friction. Because they feel that since it was good for them, it should be great for you. And that may not be the case. So with that, you have to understand who you are, to a large extent, was determined by other people. Sometimes some of you got lucky and had folks who had your best interests at heart and did a great job. There's others who you didn't have folks who looking out for you, and the job wasn't as great. Matter of fact, you have a lot of angst, you have a lot of hang-ups, and you're worried about a lot of stuff. This is why you have to start learning how to think yourself through your life, because with the law of intent is super important. And I'll give you an example of the law of intent. I have